Look, she's an awful, awful person, and she's done horrible, horrible things, but I will say, after seeing the first shot of this episode, I'd smoke one up with Vatic. Hello, interwebs! I'm here to review the latest episode of Star Trek Picard, this time Season 3, Episode 8, Surrender. And staying spoiler-free up front, I had to double-check after watching this episode to make sure that we still have 2 episodes left this season, because honest to God, this felt like the season finale. Without getting into too many specifics, this episode felt like it was the culmination of a lot of the different storylines that we've had going on this season. Not just like with big bad stuff and sort of the overarching plot, but with actual like individual conflicts that we've had going on here too, like between Shaw and Seven and Data and Lore and things like that. It really felt like a lot of stuff was coming to a head and getting concluded here. And while there are many more questions and things to deal with at the end of this episode, if they had told me that this was the season finale and we weren't going to get any more after this, and they had managed to like tie off some of the stuff a little bit more with a clear bow, I would have felt emotionally satisfied. So the very fact that there are 2 more episodes after this dealing with some of the further ramifications has me both very excited and very nervous, because I'm like, how can you top this? Because this was so great. And not only that, it also felt like a conclusion to stuff that we'd wanted to see in past seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation, stuff that just sort of like wrapping up some storylines, kind of similar to the Rose stuff from episode 5. But on top of that, also just giving us a little bit of nostalgia moments for us TNG fans and fans of Star Trek generally, but in ways that felt like they not only acknowledged the nostalgia of the past, but actually gave little hints to things that I wish could have been, and maybe could have been better in those olden days. And I'll talk some more about that when I get into specifics. But overall, this was just a phenomenal episode 8 of the show, and has me very pumped to see where we're going to go with the next 2. But to talk about it, let's get into spoilers. Also, before I get into spoilers, can I just say I picked this picture of Lore for the video, and I have to say, I think I made a mistake, because it looks like he's just staring angrily at my head. And it kind of freaks me out a little bit. Anywho, let's actually talk about the episode. Yeah. So I loved the opening here with Vatic smoking one up, and we get like a reverse cage shot through the dome at the top of the ship, of the bridge, and her setting the stage for the desperateness that is the situation going on here, like taking their ears, their eyes. I love the poetic nature of the way she describes killing people, and like her dancing while she's listening to people being murdered is absolutely horrifying, yet fits this sort of like very theatrical character. Amanda Plummer has just killed it this season, and you know, given where this episode ends, considering we probably won't get to see any more of her, again, we're in spoiler territory here, I would have to say her performance has just been top-notch, especially these last 2 episodes where she's just delivered, and I've loved it, even though I've known she's horrible. I will say, though, she said, take the road in front of them. I'm like, you do not take the long road in front of Starfleet officers. We know this all the way from the 22nd century, damn it. I also like that we get a little bit of conflict between Seven and Shaw here. It's kind of an age-old conflict. We've seen this numerous times throughout not just this show, but many shows, but it's one that works and comes out of both Seven and Shaw's characters, where Shaw's like, you should have killed me to save the ship, and Seven's like, I don't want to trade your life. And you understand both sides of their argument. Why, you know, if Seven had killed Shaw, they might have prevented other deaths. Again, it makes sense, and you understand where they're both coming from. It's not her fault necessarily, but that, you know, her choice does have consequences. I like that comes up later on. But then after that moment, we go over to Vatic's ship, the Strike, and we meet Riker and Troy, and I adored every single scene with these two. You can just still see the chemistry that Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis have with each other, and I love them needling each other and going back and forth and just showing their warmth with each other. It was really wonderful to see, and I love some of the jokes that they have between each other, like Riker using Imzadi and Troy saying, I should have taught you another word. And also, I actually really loved this joke where Troy said, oh, well, the changelings who came to capture me also had the Riker charm. charm, which I love Riker acknowledging his very clear charm, because we all know Riker, he's got the charm. He could charm anybody, especially me. Anywho, moving beyond that, I like that Troy makes the jokes like, well, the changelings are also good in bed and bad at pizza. And I like that Riker doesn't get jealous at that joke. I think Riker is best written when he is just not a jealous lover. And obviously we know Troy's joking. She was well aware who they were. She says that a second later. So it was clearly a joke. But, you know, like a quick and easy way to write Riker would have been like, oh, you slept with another person. Like him getting jealous about that. But I don't really like Riker when he's written that way. I like him being very open about his wife being her own sexual being and not possessive in any way. And I thought it was just a subtle way of Riker being written that I really, really like. And the only time he's jealous of Troy is when she's with Worf, which we got hints of later on when Worf comes and rescues them, and we sort of hear Riker being like, oh, is this the continuation of the torture, as Worf sort of like professes his love for her. It was more like kind of the needling between the two of them, and it reminded me of like All Good Things, where Riker in that was very jealous of Worf, but this is in a way that's more amongst friends instead of the way that Riker was in that episode. In fact, if there's one flaw of All Good Things, I actually didn't like Riker being that jealous in that episode. It's like the one part of that episode that I'm like, I don't entirely buy, though I do like in that episode that and this is talking about All Good Things now, but he was more aware that's about himself than Worf, but still. Anywho, loved all of that stuff, but also focusing on Riker and Troy. I also like that we learn that Troy is the one who took Riker's pain from the death of their son. And I also like the acknowledgement of Kestra as well. And Riker saying, you took that from me. And you understand where Troy came from as well. She was wrong to do it. Like, Troy was definitely in the wrong to take his emotions. She has no right to do that. However, you understand where that came from, because she was bearing the weight of everyone, because she could feel it all, and she wanting to take it and bear the burden. It very much fits her character as a counselor and as a person, and so I think that was a good acknowledgement of like her wrongdoing, but also where she was emotionally coming from with that choice. So excellent there, and I like them coming to a resolution on it. But then we jump over to Jack and Picard and everyone, and we talk about Jack being able to, for lack of a better phrase, astral project and control of the people's bodies. And I'll talk a bit more about my theory on that in just a little bit. But I love Jack sort of coming forward and saying, like, look, this is my ability. And then Crusher being like, are you okay in the head? But finally getting confirmed. And him talking about how, you know, he's always felt different. Something's different about him. And I liked that because, again, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about last episode with Jack being self-hating. And, you know, something that I felt as a queer person in my life is I always knew something was quote-unquote different about me. Like, I felt different than the way the world told me I had to be. It was just something that I was, and I thought that I was self-hating, but it was actually not that, and it was just me being who I am and the world not accepting that. And I resonated really a lot with Jack. Like, I would not have expected that Jack would be the character that I resonated with the most throughout these episodes, but I've really resonated with his emotional journey these past 2 episodes. And I like especially when he goes up and confronts Vadic on the bridge, to just stay at the emotional journey here. She says, was it guilt that made you want to go and help other people? And I've spoken about this in my other videos, just relating to myself a little bit, is as a trans person, I actually felt like self-hating so much so that I wanted to give my life for others. Like, if I didn't care about myself, if I didn't care who I was, I might as well just give everything to other people. So I relate to Jack wanting to go out and do good in the world, because it sort of defeats this self-hating feeling that he's had in his life, and sort of says like, oh, well, if I do that, maybe I'm a better person, but also sort of not caring enough about himself and who he is, and wanting to share that with others because he doesn't want to give to himself. So I just really relating with Jack on every level here. But he astral projects into someone on the bridge, and they're trying to put in the code, but Vadic catches them. I liked this because it wasn't Jack putting someone in direct danger. I thought he was going to, like, jump at Vadic or something, but he didn't do that with someone else's body, which I thought was good. And Vadic saying, like, look, your time's up. I'm going to start killing people now. And she clearly knows what's going on with Jack more than he does. And starts, you know, questioning people and, like, making it, like, as agonizing as possible when she's going to kill these people. And she kills Tavine, which I was like, no, not my both Vulcan lady. I loved her so much. So that was kind of upsetting, even though she was like a secondary bridge character. I still actually thought she was really cool. So that was upsetting and really dark. It was a really dark scene, but I thought fit Vadic as a character and what she was trying to do and fuck with everybody and get them emotionally charged up so they make mistakes. To the point where they do go on the bridge and, you know, Jack tries to buy them time to deal with the Data lore stuff, which we'll talk about in just a second. And we sort of had this great conversation where Vadic's, again, pointing at the guilt, what I was talking about with Jack earlier. But I will take note here, and this is where I'm going to get into my theory, because it's going to connect to something else in a second, is Jack does say there's no point resisting to Vadic. And resisting is an interesting word here. And another interesting thing to note, by the way, if I'm just pointing things out, is that Seven says, I'm going to accept the consequences, and she stays on the bridge. And Vadic says, it's fitting that you, meaning Seven, are on the bridge to witness this, as she's about to reveal to Jack what he actually is. Now, why would it be fitting that Seven, an ex-Borg, would be on the bridge for this moment? Again, my theory is the ability that Jack is able to like astral project and connect to other people's minds is because he's part Borg in some way. Just saying, there's the connections. They're there. Just picking up what you're laying down, Terry Metalis. Just saying. So that was just something I was kind of noticing a little bit there, which is little hints and tinges there. Speaking of which, we also have Raffi and Worf and everyone finding Picard's body over on Vadic's ship, where they do find out that they took the sort of Iriomotic syndrome part of Picard's brain out of his head, which connects with last episode, where we learned that the diagnosis of Iriomotic syndrome might have been misdiagnosed, which would then connect with Jack being Borg as well, so there's little hints within that there too. But this does bring us to Data and Lore, and I love that they are going to try and use him to take over the ship again, because he's able to do that, but they need to break down the partition between Data and Lore. And I loved these sequences between Data and Lore. Brent Spiner killing it as both characters. And number one, this was just a fitting conclusion to those two's character arc, because while Lore kind of has an end in the episode Descent, I always felt that there was a little bit more that was needed between those two characters, and here we're finally getting it. But I like that this is Data beating Lore with kindness and caring, that Lore is sort of taking all these trophies of Data's life and making them a trophy because he wants the aesthetic of power. He wants to show off. That's what people who need to show off their power do. And Data understanding that the emotional truth is much more important throughout all of this, and is able to trick Lore into making Data a part of himself. The only question that I have amongst all of this is we do get to see Spot, and I have to question, is this boy Spot or girl Spot? And that's a deep cut TNG joke right there for all of you. Anywho, I thought that this was a really beautiful thing because not only was it Data doing this with kindness, it allows them to kind of argue that Lore is a part of Data, that it's not destroying Lore necessarily, but making them kind of integrated in some way, that there is a part of Lore in Data for the rest of time. And, you know, that was one thing I didn't like about last week's episode, that, you know, not that, like, within the context of the universe, not like I hated it about the episode itself, but like the characters being like, well, what if we just killed Lore? And it's like, Lore is an awful human being, or person, I should say. But he, you know, just straight up murder for the moment would have been terrible, to just, like, kill Lore in order to get Data in there. But I like that there's this more integrating way to do so, and it was kind of Lore's own fault for doing it. So I thought that was a really beautiful end to that. And the moment between Geordi and Data after this was truly beautiful. Like Data joking, he's like, I can't do contractions anymore. I thought that was great. And Data saying, I always have value in our friendship. Again, the Geordi and Data shippers just having a moment. It was absolutely sweet and wonderful, and a great, like, sort of you know, connection between these two men that meant so much to watch for 7 seasons and 4 movies. So just a great bit there. And also I love Data being like enjoying being old. It's like, oh, this is new, and I like just him having joy of being old. That's really nice. I think we need more stories of people enjoying aging. We have such a fear of aging in our society, and getting to see people revel in being old, I think is a cool thing to see. And I think Data having that, like, innocence in enjoying being an old person, I thought was very nice, and I liked seeing that. We do sort of wrap out the episode though with Seven and Jack able to getting one up on Vadic, and I love her saying fucking solid was great, and getting shot out the ship. And I was shocked to see this because Vadic dying in episode 8, that's a bold move to kill off your main villain in the 8th episode of a 10-episode season. So I'm really curious to see where they're going to go with this, obviously building with Jack and the larger changeling threat, but a bold move considering how amazing Amanda Plummer was. So very shocked to see it, and I'm sad to see her go because she was a really fun and intriguing villain to continually watch. We also get some badass moments with Raffi, like Raffin going and kicking butt. I was like, hell yeah, I am so here for Raffi kicking ass. That was awesome to see. But then we sort of wrap out the episode as we see they take control of the ship and everyone gets saved. And I loved the final sequence where we get in the briefing room and we get to see our TNG crew back together again. I love the small little moments we get here. Like Picard sort of saying, did we disrespect Data's memory by bringing you back? And Data saying, you know, season 1 Data, whole thing, he's resting peacefully now, I'm me now, we're moving on. And I like Data being well in touch with his emotional truth. And I love some of the lines that Data has, by the way, as he's taking over the ship. Like, I think I wrote them down. Monologuing protoplasms and pissed off positronic being. I love all of that. Like, all of that stuff, and just the lines that Data had was really great. Felt very Data, but like an emotional Data. Loved that. But the moment that I really enjoyed the most during all of this was the moment between Beverly and Crusher. Because, you know, I love Beverly and Crusher. I think they're great characters, but they certainly were two characters on the Next Generation, a show that was made in the 80s, that were very much written as women in the 80s, put in the caregiver role, the doctor role, the mother role. And one of the big problems amongst the many problems with these two characters when they were written in the 80s, again, there were great moments too, but one of the big problems was these two characters as women never got to interrelate with each other all that much. The only times they really did get chances to talk with each other were when they were talking about a guy, and even more so when they were talking about a guy while they were doing typically girly things. I think of very specifically there was the very infamous workout scene between the two of them, and also there's a scene I think in The Host where they're sort of like getting their hair done and they're talking about a guy.
But there's nothing rational about this. Who needs rational when your toes curl up?
And again, you know, no shade at working out or getting your hair done, but they are sort of stereotypically girly things while also only talking about a man. So again, this does not fix all of those problems, but for Troy and Beverly to get a small moment where they get to respect each other's professionalism on their own terms and pass the Bechdel test, by the way, which is a bare minimum. It's not a goalpost to aim for, it is a bare minimum. But for them to break that bare minimum finally and be talking about each other professionally, not about guys and doing other girly thing, you know, stereotypically girly things, I thought was a great moment. Again, small thing, doesn't fix all the problems of 7 years and decades of mistreatment, behind the scenes and on the camera sometimes. But I liked that little beat. But this all brings us to the end of the episode where they decide to go and investigate what's going on with Jack. And I love that Troy gets to be like the active investigator with her powers because Marina Sirtis, again, very rarely got to be an active investigator with her empathic ability. She was always sort of passive or sometimes a victim because of them. So for her to be able to help Jack actively, I think is a really cool thing for her character to get to do. But then I'm like, oh no! We're ending the episode right when they're about to open the door. And I was like, no, I want to know what happens. God damn it. So I was like very pissed off as like that's where we're going to end the episode. Such a great cliffhanger, but I'm excited to see what we're finally going to learn in the penultimate episode of the season and potentially Picard as a whole, as a series. So yeah, this is great. Again, felt like a season finale even while there's still some stuff open up. Some bold moves, some great character resolutions. I loved this episode, but I'd love to hear what all of you thought. Are you enjoying this as much as I am? I'd love to hear all that down below. Do you buy into my Jack is a Borg theory? Resistance is futile, as they say. But I wish you all well, and until next week, my friends, live long and prosper.